What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. It's episode 816 of The O Show. We are in Las Vegas, Nevada. It is Super Bowl week, and you get $20 off your order for anything, whether it's Super Bowl 58 here in Vegas. You got the Chiefs, you got the 49ers, you got concerts. A lot of people have residencies out here, too. You're getting $20 off your next order using my promo code OSHOW20. That's capital OSHOW 20 over at tickpick.com. It is episode 816 of the podcast. Michael, I was telling you, I interviewed Monique Leclerc earlier.
Yeah.
She's like, he's a trip. He's a character. He might interview you more than you interview him.
Yeah.
You say you book at least 50 podcasts for your own podcast every year, but then you'll go on like 100 to 150 shows per year.
Yeah, I think my interview, because I have a playlist on my folder, and I think it's like 500 right now. I think that's where it's at. But yeah, I try to go on as many as possible. I actually find that I feel a little freer on other people's shows than I do on my own.
Because I feel like you can open more up about yourself as opposed to just asking people questions.
Yeah, if I was sitting there talking about myself on my show, I would feel very strange.
I mean, there's so many like different content creators out there who will just sit in a chair like this, look at a camera like that, and then just spew off whatever they want to spew off.
Yeah, it's funny. I hung out with Casey Zander a couple weeks ago, and it was really interesting because this guy's got 400,000 subs on YouTube, and he just looks in the camera and makes these 10-minute videos, and he talks very methodically, and he repeats himself several times and gets these very interesting points across. And it was just like, I can't do content like that. Like my content is different. I need somebody to bounce stuff off of, and then I want to get into like very, very deep psychological stuff, sometimes to my own detriment.
Which is the best kind of content too. Yeah. It gets people talking.
Yeah,
you're a guy who's interviewed, I feel like, all walks of life for a long time. I've seen your content for years on end now. Didn't even know you lived in Las Vegas. There's a lot of people out in Las Vegas I didn't know lived in Las Vegas.
Yeah,
like, oh, they're.
Yeah, I at first I was telling all my friends to move here, and now it's like I'm starting to realize that this place is going to turn into Austin. Because I used to live in Austin, and I would tell my friends, I was like, hey, just so you know, like this is better than any city in Texas. It's fucking incredible. And now if you go to Austin, it's turned into one giant Starbucks. Like it's crazy. It's so corporate there, and Vegas is like that. Vegas feels like Austin did 20 years ago to me. It's just, there's no traffic. There's no state income tax. It's unbelievable how fun it is here. And I'm just kind of worried that everyone's going to figure this out and like leave. Because it was so funny to me when everybody left LA to move to Austin. And I was like, whew, they forgot about us because they don't think this is like a real city to live in. But this is the best city I've ever lived in.
Yeah, I would say the Californians are coming.
Yeah.
I would say I'm from Phoenix. I'll go back and forth. I'm here like every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's like here, it's Nashville, it's Austin, it's Toronto's blowing up. There's just Dallas, Houston, all these odd cities where like it used to be New York and LA and everything else. Yeah. Now there's just so many different places people are going.
You don't need to be near those epicenters anymore in order to be. So like, for instance, if you wanted to do if you wanted to do trade equities, you needed to live in New York. If you wanted to trade commodities, you needed to live in Chicago. And if you wanted to be involved in tech or fintech, you needed to be somewhere in Northern California. That was it. There was no other way around it. You needed to be in certain cities for certain type of industries. If you wanted to be a singer, an actress, or a television star, you were going to have to live in Los Angeles, right? And if you wanted to model runway, you could live in maybe could live in New York, and then there was a little bit of that crossover in Miami, and that was it. There was no huge model living in Dallas that just didn't exist before. There were a lot of pretty girls there, but what's happened is because so much of what we can do is virtual. I know so many girls right now who make several $100,000 a month, making content on OnlyFans, and they do it from their home, and then ask them like, so where do you live? And they're like, yeah, I live in Fargo, North Dakota. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. She's like sitting there like making content with her husband in Fargo, and you just don't know. And she gets invited to all these parties in Los Angeles and San Diego and Bel Air and Las Vegas and Scottsdale, and you just don't even realize that that's what's going on. So yeah, it's very different. Like you just don't need. And the other thing is the digital nomad. So that this type of individual that didn't exist previously is he's in his early 20s. He learned how to code in Python. He's an expert on AI, and he has some app that makes Amazon FBA storefronts in 20 seconds. Whatever. And he lives in Tulum. And he's out there dating different girls or whatever. And it's just like that life didn't exist before. The idea of running a multi-million-dollar business from Tulum, Mexico wasn't a reality until we had the bandwidth that we do now. So that's the thing that's changed. I will say this, though. The one thing that's very different is that, and this has to do with my content, is that high-status men and attractive men normally distribute, meaning there is a top tier cardiologist that lives in Wichita, Kansas, and there's one that lives in Des Moines, Iowa, right? But really attractive women do not normally distribute. They go to Brickell, West Hollywood, they go to Bel Air, they go to Las Vegas, they go to Scottsdale, and they don't. Really attractive women do not migrate to Waco and Tulsa. They just don't do it. And so that's where things are a little bit different. Is that, because of the fact that these women have access to so many different avenues, different people. When they choose to move to Brickell and South Beach and Edgewater and places like that. So
yeah. Well, you mentioned OnlyFans. What's your take on OnlyFans? Because there's different ways to look at it if you're a female, right?
So I'll look at it like this. What's my take on, like, say, antibiotics? And it's a weird analogy. But it's like, let's go back to antibiotics. I think broad spectrum antibiotics in 1947. If you look at antibiotics in total, it saved so many people's lives. It's really amazing. But we've gotten to the point now where we're on the verge of possibly creating antibiotic-resistant strains of bacteria that could kill like millions and millions of people, right? We haven't got to that point yet, but when we do, then the question is, was antibiotics a good thing or was it a bad thing? And the answer, it was kind of both.
Yeah.
So if you're going to ask me in total, is it good for society and dating and the divorce and marriage market? No, OnlyFans is miserably bad. It's definitely not been good for that. It's definitely give a lot of people a lot of cope. And what's happened is there was the decontextualized images of sex that's in pornography. Those things, your husband was looking at those things and jerking off in the shower, and that was it. Mm-hmm. But what he wasn't doing was falling in love with the porn star. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Now guys are on Instagram or on OnlyFans paying for a girlfriend experience. So like legitimately the validation that your partner was looking for, you're giving it to another woman. It's like some women understand men have sexual urges, but like they might be in love with one woman but still have sexual urges. But in this case now, like I when I talk to these girls, like they're literally having relationships with these guys. They never meet them, but they're having relationships with these guys. So from that standpoint, I don't think it's helped. Now, from the standpoint of like when you consider if you lived in Colombia or Panama or someplace like that, and the standard of living is so outrageously low compared to the United States, and your options are for you to go there and either become a regular prostitute, try to get a job in a place where you're just not going to get hired or you just no economic opportunity because there's no middle class in those countries, or make $100,000 a month doing OnlyFans. Like, it's just, for girls here, they kind of have a decision. I see girls in like Romania and Colombia. I don't even know how that's not a decision. When you have a family that's starving and like that you can make like 70 G's a month, like what are you supposed to do? I just I don't know how. I was talking, I had Fresh and Fit on my show last night, and then I was Aaron Clary, Jake Shields, the MMA guy. We were all on the show with Rollo. And we were talking about this, and I was like, I can't imagine what I would be like as a man if I had 1,000 women a month offering me sex. What would that be like? 1,000 women a month just on there, just like, come out with me, come on dates with me, women offering me money to have sex. I would become intolerable. I think I would become intolerant. So, but I can't blame women for being the way they are sometimes. And then I can't imagine what would happen for me if I was like in a situation where, because I've seen girls that are surgical nurses, and some girls, I know one girl, she's an attorney, and they make so much money from OnlyFans that they stop their law practice and they stop practicing as surgical nurses because it's just so much more money. There was a guy, I believe he's drafted out of Florida, Michael Doliak. He played center for the Orlando Magic, and he was accepted in med school after his graduate degree or after his bachelor's degree. And he had a decision. Do I go to med school and become a surgeon, or do I play center in the NBA? And the reality is he went to go play center in the NBA because he's never going to make as much money.
Yep.
Right. And it's just, so that's just one of the situations where you see that humans are going to take the path of least resistance most of the time. So there's a third aspect of this, and that is the women who did live in this country who were being trafficked, and now they have the ability to like get out from underneath that. That's a good. Is it a common good for the entire country? I don't think so, but it is a good for those women for sure. Mm-hmm. So the answer is it's both. It's both. There is some good and then some bad. I will tell you though, as a man trying to find a woman to be with who's attractive, there's so much incentive for her to I'm not passing judgment here, but there's so much incentive for her to sexualize herself in order to make money and to network, that you as a man, you're having to share her in that instance. Like my girlfriend's a world champion bikini model. I don't mind that she posts bikini pictures. I like it. It doesn't bother me.
It's part of
at
the
all.
brand.
She also finds women attractive, so like it's kind of good. So she so in that situation with her, it's one of those things. But she doesn't have an OnlyFans, and like she's not having like private relationships with other people online. And I've seen some guys that are even fine with that. They're like, hey, girl, as long as you bring that money home, stay at home dudes, stay at home boyfriends, whatever, that take care of the dogs and the kids or whatever. Yeah, we're just living in a different time. So the answer is it's both good and bad.
Yeah.
Right. That's the answer is both good and bad. I've seen some, and I think for a lot of guys, they're very upset because they're working 9-to-5 jobs, not getting any validation from women. And they see some girl that like didn't even finish high school and she's making $1 million a month, and it bothers them a lot. I think it's where a lot of the animosity for it comes from. But I also do think it is wrecking relationships.
Yeah, you unpacked a lot of shit right there.
Yeah.
But I even look at it as simple as like, oh, like especially when you're like, let's say you're just like a normal dude trying to make it in whatever industry you're making it. Whether it's like me as a podcaster, someone trying to make it as a lawyer, doctor, whatever, working 80 to 100 hours a week, just grinding for nothing starting out, and just watching someone who had like the God-given looks as a female, and you're just making like, I think it was Mandy Rose, former WWE superstar, made $500,000 in 1 week.
Yeah,
on like her first week on OnlyFans.
Yeah. I'm friends with several of these girls, and it's pretty common for them. They make $50,000 their first week.
Yeah,
that'd be a very common thing, and it just the incentivization to. The other thing that I've seen that happens often is girls who are in committed relationships and will go have sex with a male performer or a couple because they're going to get $80,000 from video sales. I've seen that happen especially here in Vegas, and it's just like you're incentivized. Also, women, some of these women choose their boyfriends based on whether or not they can perform with them on camera. So like they'll just like not have they won't even date certain guys. Like it's a question they have to ask themselves, and it's like, man, what in the world? You know, like it's for me, it would affect me because I wouldn't want to do that. And any woman who'd even consider that, I wouldn't want to be in a relationship with. But I just see that there's a trickle-down effect. I don't think guys understand. It's like as more women take themselves out of this like viable dating market, there's just fewer women left to choose from. So I think that's what happens. And the other thing happens too with guys, like as guys become extremely high status, valuable, charismatic, wealthy, whatever, get themselves in shape or whatever, they start having so many more options with women, and then a lot of them will take themselves out. They'll still hook up with a bunch of girls, but they'll take themselves out of the serious dating market. You know, so it can happen to both sides. What I've seen though more so is like it kind of feels like this to me. I can show the numbers that show this almost like empirically. There's 15% of guys who are crushing it financially with women. They just have their shit together. Women notice them immediately. They're always like, it's never a situation where they're getting passed over. If they ask a girl on a date, she's going to say yes. There's this top 15% of guys. Underneath those 15% of guys are all women. And underneath those women are the bottom 85% of men. And those bottom 85% of men are chasing those women. And those women are chasing those top 15% of guys. So when people talk about, concepts like a patriarchy or, or do men or women cheat more? The problem is you're talking about two different genders, but there's three different genders. There's high status men, there's women, and there's low status men. Those are three different genders. And high status men and low status men have nothing to do with each other. So when you say, do men cheat more? If you were to say, do high status men cheat more? The answer is yes. Do low status men cheat more? The answer is they don't cheat at all. Yeah. They have no options to. And so women can't differentiate the two because they see all men as one thing. The other thing is, you'll talk to a girl and she'll just consistently talk about being cheated on, dating a narcissist, whatever. And you go through her previous boyfriends and it's just like, no one told you to date the bartender, the male stripper in the VIP house. You chose to do that. And now when I ask you about the crossing guard or the guy who's delivering mail, I remember this one video I saw one time. This guy was asking girls about like average guys. And so she says, so the guy points at this one dude. He goes, hey, what do you think about that guy over there? And she goes, which guy? It's like, that dude right there. She goes, what you talking about behind the mailman? And he goes, no, I'm talking about the mailman. Like in her mind, she could not conceive the mailman was a man. Does that make sense? He doesn't exist. And so that's kind of where it is. There's this 15% of men that women represent in their mind as all men. And there's the bottom 85% of men that they just don't even see.
Do you think that's all women? Or do you think that's just like the...
No, I think that effect is stronger with women who are hyperactive on social media.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Do I think it's all women? No, I think it's when we're dealing like let's just say 20 to 40 years old in the dating market and single, of that group of women specifically, it's a extremely large number. And what's crazy to me is how many of them are unaware of what I just said. Like they legitimately think they see all people the same. Like just watch, like they don't ask them. I walk into a room, and maybe this is just because I used to work in counterintelligence, but like I immediately know how many people are in the room. Like I sit facing the door and I can tell, and I remember what people look like. And if there was a crime that happened, I could give the police a full description. If you ask a woman like what our waiter looked like, they don't remember. If he wasn't cute, they don't remember what he looked like. They don't remember his name. Like they just don't remember men who they don't find remarkable. And so what happens is the men they do find remarkable, they think that's all men, and so it becomes like this really strange phenomenon that happens.
Well, let me flip the coin then.
Yeah.
What about men when it comes to women? I feel like it's almost astronomical when it comes to men looking at certain women in a certain way versus, like, let's say there's a bottom 85% of women that guys just don't see.
Yeah, but that doesn't exist. So if what we were saying was true, then what we would see on dating apps is, so just to give you an idea, the top 10% of men on dating apps get 63% of the right swipes.
Right.
10% get 63. Top 20% get 83% of the right swipes. The top 40% get 96% of the right swipes, which means the bottom 60% of men are getting 4% of the right swipes. Okay. For women, the top 10% of women, or I'm sorry, the top 63% of women's right swipes go to 43% of women. So remember, it's 10% for men, but 43% of women are getting. Men are right swiping 55% of the time. Women are right swiping 5% of the time. So the distribution does not average out, meaning the girl who is not attractive is still getting outrageous levels of attention. And I'll show you some videos. There's one girl like morbidly obese, like lives in a trailer park, and she goes over like how men send her thousands of dollars a month just to like hang out with her, send her pennies, like crazy stuff like that. Men are in such levels of desperation that no, we're not at the same level. It's I believe under the age of 30, it was 2/3 of men are single and 1/3 of women, right? And those 1/3 of women are single because they want to be. Those 2/3 of men are single because they have to be, for the most part. So. Yeah, the distribution is not the same. Women in general, this is the way I had to explain. Aaron Clary said this, and someone else said it. Is like women in general are not interested in men in general. Mm-hmm. Women in general don't like men in general. That's just the way it is. They like a few men up at the top, and then complain about those men because they have so many options. But in general, that's not the case. And it's the dilemma of perceived choice. So what happens is because a woman fucked a 10, she thinks she can date a 9. She thinks she can get a 9 to commit. So because she fucked Drake, she thinks that she can get like the super hot male stripper she knows because he's below Drake and she fucked Drake. So she thinks, and because the difference between short-term dating and long-term dating is lost to them in often cases, they start believing the attention they get short-term will equate to long-term. Another really crazy example is like a woman she'll swipe 600 times for every one date she goes on. I believe it's something like that. Wow. That number could actually, I believe the number was like for 10 dates, it was 16,000 swipes, some crazy number like that. So in her mind, she's left swiped on thousands of men, over 10,000 men. In her mind, she believes she's more attractive than those men. She believes she's better than those men, and she believes often that some or most or all of those men would commit to her long term. And obviously the answer is no, that's not true. These dating apps are for short-term sexual access.
Yeah.
Normal, well-adjusted women do not need to go on dating apps because women do not need an app to get them short-term sexual access. They walk outside and get short-term sexual access. They don't have to have an app. And so that's what you'll find is on these dating apps, you'll have 6 times as many guys as girls on there. And the women on there are just like the way they choose men is just outrageously skewed to like the top.
What about all of this intrigues you? Why is this kind of your brand in a sense?
Because it's something that's easily solvable, maybe not population wide, but for a small group of men that choose to fix it and want to be in the top 15%. It's just never been easier to get into that top 15%. The group of men up there as a percentage has probably never been smaller as a percentage, but the ability to get into it has never been easier because the methods to get in there are shamed by society in general. And so because they're shamed, you see so many men that just don't want to go. They don't do it. I see academics that like say just crazy stuff of like there is no crisis in dating and no, women aren't delusional. And it's just like, no, dude, you're saying that because you want women to approve of you and you want money for your academic research. And it's just like, well, because you're saying these things that are empirically not true, you're rewarding bad behavior, and you're actually rewarding men for not taking on masculine traits that would make them attractive to women. There's the thing. If I'm a woman and I'm giving women advice on how to be better at dating men, in some way, I am either taking away power or agency from men. Does that make sense?
Right.
It's just like in chess. As I give one side more power, I have to be taking away from the other side. So if I were to hear a woman giving really good advice to women, it would sound somewhat toxic to me. It would be like, oh, like, don't answer his messages on time, and like give him mixed signals, and like show up on time sometimes and not sometimes, and then like dress really sexy and then don't have sex with him to make him wait. Like, these are toxic, very like manipulative ways of getting men to chase. Does that make sense?
Right.
So if I did the same thing for men, and I was giving men advice on like how to be better with women, from a woman's standpoint, they're gonna sound toxic. But unfortunately, if you don't do these things, you don't really stand a chance, because the guy who is doing these things is taking your girl. That's just a matter of fact. And that's the thing. Like, it's one of these things, like, I don't want to play this game. Like, no, whenever I hear men or women say, I don't want to play this game, and my thought is like, gravity doesn't need you to believe in it for it to be real. Like, gravity still affects you no matter how much you don't believe in it. Flat earthers. It's still real. And this game that you're playing of, all of us are playing a game, because none of us are walking around in a clown suit, like smelling like Dookie. Like, we are all dressing to a certain extent to be attractive to the opposite sex, or at least presentable to the opposite sex. We're all playing the game, regardless of whether or not we want to play the game. And so when people say, "Well, I don't want to play this game," well, it's still being played for you. Like, no matter if you're a guy and you're like, I'm going to be myself, and I'm not going to improve, and I don't really care what these women want. That's fine. You can do that, and the women will justifiably never have sex with you also. Both of those things are true. You see what I'm saying? So that's the difference. The difference with women is that women can just be in default mode and not improve themselves, whatever, and get any relationship they want. Not any, but like a lot of relationships. Men can't do the same. We have a burden of performance in general. Men have a burden of performance, and if they don't perform, and if they're not useful to other men or useful to other people in general, then they're not going to be able to get the woman that they want, unless they have something outrageously going for them, like they're born famous or incredibly good looking or something like that.
Oh, I mean, you see people who are just like, like Chet Hanks, for example, probably does really well.
Yeah,
but he's a total. I don't know Chet Hanks personally, but like from what you see and hear, it's like he sounds like a total mess.
I've messaged him a couple times.
Right.
Wes Watson was talking to me about having him on my show. I was thinking about having him on. But yeah, I mean, it could be something like that. I mean, I'm sure he does well with women, probably because of some level of notoriety or fame. And that's the other thing that's really sad. There's this thing called Parallel Live, and it's an app that was created where it looks like you're on Instagram Live, but it's not Instagram Live. It's a fake Instagram Live where it looks like 50,000 people are watching you, and you can record the interactions, and you just see these guys using Parallel Live, and the women see that 50,000 people are watching you, and they're in relationships, they have boyfriends, and they start grinding on your dick and just like groping these guys. It was crazy, just because the guy has 50,000 of people watching, and it's fake.
Do they show comments too?
Yeah, it'll show comments.
Comments is always the tell.
Yeah.
For people who are like growing like their accounts in a fake manner and just buying bots and whatever, it's like if you have 100,000 followers but 13 comments.
Well, the problem is that it works sometimes. That's still like, there's guys out there who will buy 5 million followers and they don't have the comments to back it up, but women will still go out with them. Like, the women women aren't going to go on Social Blade and look and see when you got all your interactions. They're not going to do that. And so in essence, what happened, and this often happens with me. Some of my female friends or my girlfriend's friends, they'll ask me about a dude, and I tend to spend 5 seconds looking him up on Social Blade, and I can tell everything about the guy. And I'll tell her real quick. I was like, but women don't do that inherently for themselves often, and they end up in relationships where it's like they're only with this guy because of a feeling, and they're not looking at objective reality around them, and it ends up ends up working out in a mess. And by the way, men are delusional too. I don't want to put that out. Men are, but their delusion is different. Men's delusion, while sometimes it may also be based in some sort of feeling that they're having, it has to do more with either pornography screwing up their ability to contextualize sex. Like, they don't understand the difference between romantic sex between them and their partner. Men will end up in their late teens with erectile dysfunction because they watch too much pornography. That'll cause them to be delusional. Additionally, the images that they see of women on social media, especially with the artificial intelligence images that are coming out, these AI influencers, men are starting to believe that women look like that. And they don't look like that. Unless you live in Vegas, then they do look like that.
Yeah.
But other than that, the women don't look like that. And so that's one of the things that I've seen is that men become, it's often I'll be doing a show and I'll have 10 girls on and they're pretty, like they're models. They actually get paid to be models. Mm-hmm. And the audience is like, these girls are ugly as fuck. They're all 2s, 3 or 4 hoes. And I'm like, but bro, you're calling a girl an ugly girl, but she would never date you. Like no girl of her level of attractiveness would ever give you the time of day, but you're calling her ugly. That's a male cope. Yeah. Some men have a cope as well too. It's just the difference with those, the male cope and the female cope is that like the female cope I think has an actual detriment to society. The male cope does too to some extent, but these men are like, they don't have a chance anyway. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If a person that was never going to work for you tells you that your company sucks, what does it matter? Like, it doesn't, or a person who was never going to buy your product doesn't like you, what does it matter? He was never going to buy your product.
Exactly.
These men are already out of the market and then just making, like, in order to avoid rejection, they say crazy stuff about women online. Mm-hmm. So both things are true. And it's funny, the stuff I said about women earlier in this podcast, that stuff will go viral. The stuff I just said about men won't.
No.
Yeah, it won't
It'll
go viral.
be shadow banned.
It's not even it won't be shadow banned. It's just no one will care.
Yeah.
When you criticize men, no one cares. They do not care. Just take to this. We're going to have 2 podcasts, just on general, okay? And one podcast is going to be men. It's going to be women warning other women about men. There's a podcast right now called Kill All Men. If women had a podcast where women were warning other women about men, that podcast would be lauded and awarded. If there was a podcast where men warning other men about women, that podcast would be considered misogynistic and be put on some government watch list. That's the difference. It's like not only we've gotten to the point now where not only is male self-improvement derided by mainstream society, it's actually like warned against. It's censored, right? The idea of men improving themselves is like now to the point where it's become censored. So, like I said before, if you just choose to adopt masculine qualities and stop listening to what Disney said, it's just like getting in the top 15% is effortless now. So you asked why this was so interesting to me. It's like, well, if I have a company where I can just get men to understand these concepts and not like literally look at scientific data and actually look at anecdotal success that men have with women, as opposed to listening to what mainstream pop psychologists say about attachment styles or fucking the 5 love languages.
Yeah.
Instead of doing that, instead of actually looking at like what works and what doesn't, observing men who are successful with women rather than listening to men who say they're successful with women, and instead of listening to women for dating advice, actually looking at who those women end up dating. The woman who keeps saying, "Do you men, you need to like level up your personality and do all this kind of stuff," and then you look at her boyfriend and she's dating a male stripper who can't even speak right. It's like one of those kind of deals where it's like if you just observe people's actions and not their words, then you can formulate your own plan of attack. And when you do that, you're going to have a lot more success with much less effort. Because like I said before, it's like it's not only that the correct things are not being taught, it's like when you teach the correct things, you're banned on YouTube. That's what's going on.
That's very true.
Yeah.
I was having a ton of conversations all week long about how I went to school for 18 years, didn't learn anything. Sure. Like I would say that like the last 7 years of my life actually figuring stuff out on my own, I've learned way more than I did in 18 years. Because they teach you to be an employee and to not really know anything.
Yeah, I mean you almost like to some extent you can't like the blame you can put the blame on the school system, but the issue is like there's no way for the school system to keep up with the rate at which technology was changing. As we have what's called a Prussian model of schooling in the United States, whereas we manufacture workers that by the time they're 18 they have enough at least basic rudimentary understanding of English, science, geography, and mathematics to where they can be useful members of society. Most people did not get a college degree in 1850, right? Mm-hmm. It was a minority of people. So the difference, if that schooling methodology from the year 1850 to 1860 would have worked, there would have been no difference. From 1860 to 1890 would have been an issue. From 1930 to 1950 probably wouldn't have been that different.
Yeah.
But from 2010 to 2020, there's been a massive difference. It's so astronomical that there's no way the school system can keep up with it. And so the answer is obvious. The answer is read Solomon Kahn's book, The One World Schoolhouse. These educators, children need to be taught based on like the world-class professor in that field, and then they need to be taught to that way. And then the teacher needs to be managing group activities where they can like do their homework. Homework should be done in the classroom. When they're at home, they should be watching. They should be watching the lesson. They should be watching the course. So that's the way it should be taught. And when you there's a bunch of kids that are going through this right now at the Khan Academy, and their ability to retain information is astronomically higher. But the problem is not only the education system's purpose is to educate children, but the reality is what it's become is this massive slush fund for teachers unions. And those teacher unions have become monolithic and impossible to change. And so because of that, we're stuck in this model where if you're wealthy, you send your kids to private school and you avoid this monolith. But if you're not wealthy, you go to public school and you have a teacher that just like drinks on the job, and janitors that sell dope. And all these things happen in my high school. Like I saw my physics professor passing out the test, like rampant levels of violence because the teachers don't care. Like that's what ends up happening because the teachers unions employs them, like they're guaranteed jobs. And because we haven't made education, primary education in this country more competitive, that's the reason why we're falling behind as a country.
I went to private school, and I have 2 teachers, I think, who are currently in jail.
Yeah.
So it's like,
It's
it doesn't
funny.
really
Even
matter.
there, you're having the same issue. Yeah.
Like, doesn't even matter. But you touched on something a little bit earlier. In a nutshell, you said basically actions speak louder than words, right? How can you tell the difference in given actions and in given body language of both guys and girls? The guys and girls that say that they're doing well, either in relationships or just hooking up with people, versus people who are actually doing it.
I would recommend you don't look at body language at all. In fact, there's been studies that show there's these people who believe that they're called body language experts, and that whole industry has been debunked. It's not true. You can't tell from someone's body language with any degree of certainty whether they're lying or telling the truth. People have different neural pathways, and one person's tell may be another person's just like itchy face. Like it's just not. It's there. The whole reading body language concept, it's been debunked. It's not true. With men, oftentimes with dating courses, they'll teach men to reframe everything a woman does as a positive body language, so he'll be more confident when he approaches her. But what's actually happened is his confidence makes him more attractive. It's her body language could have meant she was attracted, and it could have meant she wasn't. What I do instead is only pay attention to people's actions. So a real simple rule of thumb is attention is belly button up, compliance is belly button down. Okay, so if a girl sends you a nude, you think that's compliance, but it's not. It's just attention because she sent that same nude to 34 other guys.
Yeah.
If a woman comes to your house and cooks you dinner, that's the belly button down. That means she had to walk to your place. So that means that's compliance. And in that case, that woman likes you. Does that make sense? So we just met. What did the belly button down? Did she come with you to the next venue? Did she actually show up on the date that she said she was going to go on? In that case, that's compliance. So you reward compliance. If she's just giving you attention, like, hey, do you guys like this new bikini I'm in? And you're like, you send her the heart eye emojis. Yeah. She's giving you attention, which costs her nothing. And you're responding with your attention, which devalues you. So men are devalued by giving attention for nothing, and women are devalued by giving sex for nothing, right? If I had a daughter and she was going to make a decision on who to have sex, I would hope that the man she has sex with is worth her having sex with, meaning he's willing to commit and protect, possibly provide for her in those type of situations. That's what I would hope. I would hope that my daughter wasn't giving away sex for nothing. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So as women will lose value, typically, not all the time, but they'll lose value for giving away sex for nothing. Men will lose, like women don't lose value for giving away sex for marriage, but they'll lose value for giving away sex because they got drunk at a party and like fucked a bunch of dudes, fuck the whole infield of the baseball team. Men will lose value for giving away attention for nothing. And so like that's where there's this just drastic difference because women can get sex easy. The other thing, like if you're a man and you give women attention based on their physical attractiveness, she understands inherently, her hindbrain, her hypergamy algorithm understands inherently, this man, I could get attention from him and I did nothing to earn it. I would recommend guys out there make a decision yourself. Never, ever, ever again like a girl's photo because she's attractive. Like a girl's photo because she paid off her house. Like a girl's photo because she finished her graduate degree. Like a girl's photo because she became a real estate. Don't like a real estate agent's photo, but like a real estate agent's photo when they close a deal. when a woman accomplishes a goal, like their photo, don't like their photo because they're in a new bikini. Try doing that instead and just watch how like you view the world a little bit different. When you give a woman attention based on her physical attractiveness, your intention or your intent or your attractedness to her is worthless. She did nothing to earn it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Just like men, oftentimes, if they're like not interested in being with a woman and she just keeps coming by for sex whenever he wants, it's not that he doesn't respect her. Some men don't respect her. Some men might. But like the concept of him having to get into a relationship with her is like, why would I get into a relationship with her? She should just have sex with me anytime I want. Mm-hmm. And that's what'll happen. Like I tell women often is like, if you want to get into a relationship with a dude and you keep having sex with him whenever he wants and he doesn't want to get into a relationship with you, why would he ever want to get into a relationship with you? I tell women this often, like you let your boyfriend cheat on you and then you kept taking him back. And it's just gotten to the point where like, he's just going to keep cheating. Why would he not cheat on you? Like, in fact, cheating on you has become the equilibrium of the relationship. Why would he ever do anything else? I have was one female friend of mine, and it was so, her wires were so fucking crossed. I remember one time we went out and hung out, and I left my phone on the table and went to the bathroom, and she's like, that was so incredibly sexy. She's like, my boyfriend would have never done that. He would always hide his phone from me. I was like, I don't give a fuck. You can go through my phone. I don't give a shit. And then the other part was later is that this same guy kept cheating on her over and over again, and she would brag to other women about how hot he was. In her mind, because he cheated on her repeatedly, he was more attractive. And the problem with that is maybe he was. This is not a commentary on him. Mm-hmm. The commentary was in her mind, because he was cheating on her, he was more attractive. What choice does he have but to cheat on her? He can't, if he stopped cheating on her, then he's less attractive to her. And therefore they've lost equilibrium. And then she starts losing respect for him. Do you see how crazy that is? That's fucking madness. So what I say is reward good behavior and punish bad behavior. So
that's very simple too.
It is very simple, but like, every guy out here, like sometimes I'll have photographers argue with me about this. She's like, well, yeah, I'm just trying to encourage this girl. That's why I leave comments on her photos and like her stuff. And I'm like, I encourage women all the time when they come to my apartment and cook for me. Mm-hmm. Then I will encourage them. Absolutely. For sure. I encourage my girlfriend all the time because she's good to me. That's when I'll encourage her. My girlfriend was upset the other day because I think I've been super busy and like there was one of her posts I didn't like. And I was like, but you like all these other girls' posts. And I was like, I'll give you $100 million if you can find a single girl's post I've liked, like about anything. And she's like, okay, you're right. It's like, yeah, I don't do that. You're the only girl whose photos I like ever. That's the case. I'll leave fucked up comments. Like if a girl's really tall, leave a giraffe emoji or something like that, you know. But I won't. But I'm never going to. But I just like giving women attention for non-contextual sexual images is mind-boggling to me. It's definitely something I did in my 20s, but in my 40s, it's just crazy. Like the idea of doing so, it's so obvious it makes you less attractive. Why, as a man, would you do that? It's because you're delusional, and that goes back to male delusion. That's what male delusion is.
Who was 20s Michael compared to 40s Michael?
20s Michael was consistently trying to qualify himself to other people, thought that he would talk or think his way through any kind of emotional problem, any kind of issue he had. 20s Michael did not look for mentors and was not able to humble himself to listen to other people with their instruction. 20s Michael would not use speed of implementation and suspension of disbelief. 20s Michael did not have a good diet, had a very, very poor diet, and weightlifting regimen, didn't understand what he was doing. And, that was probably the difference. 40s Michael, I'm only interested in finding people who are more successful than me and learning every single thing I can from them. And it's just like I go to dinner with like old Dan Fleischman, or I'll be out there with Ty Lopez or whatever, and they'll say something and they don't even know they said it. And I will make $1 million off what they said, because these guys, their mind is so different. These guys who just effortlessly make money like that, even when I hang out with Bilzerian, these guys effortlessly. Wes Watson makes more than that, $3.5 million a month, 90% profit, and he has no sales team.
Yeah,
that's bonkers.
Yep.
That's crazy, bro. Just he teaches you how to do work, make workout programs. I just want to listen to Wes talk about his business. Yep. Are you kidding me? That's great. Like hanging out with guys like that. I would have never thought that. I would have seen those guys at the sitting at the dance floor table or like on stage at the nightclub or eating at the expensive restaurant. I've been like, fuck those guys. Those guys probably inherited their money or whatever,
Right.
or had some sort of animosity towards them because they were more successful than me. Now I meet those guys and I'm like, bro, it's just talk, bro. I'll take you to dinner. No. Some guy whose net worth is 20x mine, I'll take him to dinner because I just want to hear him talk so I can learn from him, so I can upgrade my sales team, make my funnel better. All this kind of stuff, like just crunching and making more money, and just talking to people who are smarter than me in one thing or the other. Listen to Casey Zander talk about like how he built his business, or Bilzerian is starting a program that he's doing, and the people that have just volunteered their time to help him are so incredibly smart that every one of them, I'm like, dude, can I have you on my podcast? Can we talk about et cetera or whatever? But that's the difference between 20s Michael and probably 40 pounds of upper body muscle that didn't exist before.
Man.
That's probably a difference. But there were some things I did get right. I was like the ability to speak on camera or speak on the microphone. I was a DJ at a strip club for 4 years, so I had to be on the microphone every day. And then the concept of having female friends, that was something I did learn in my 20s that really, really helped me a lot, especially with access and calibration and meeting more women, because that is what my program basically, if you want to know, like my program's concept on dating is women introduce you to more women. That's it. If you want to know, like, you want to, in a nutshell, women constantly introducing you to more women, going to events like the one me and Monique were at last night, where there were 450 girls and like maybe 100 guys there, creating events like that repeatedly, and then women constantly introducing you to more women. That's a better way to build a dating life than swiping right on a dating app.
100%.
Yeah.
I feel like, and I think I said this to you, I think I've said this to almost everybody here since I've been out here this week. You don't truly know someone who you follow on social media. Like, I've probably followed you for a few years. I'm like, okay, like, I get a lot out of this content, but I've never actually met you in person. So, like, I don't think I necessarily had, like, an opinion on you. It's just like, oh, I finally get to meet Michael. I kind of get to put a face to the brand, right? Where, like, some people are like, oh, he's the best. He's such a good dude. I'm like, you've never met him. He could be a total dick. He could be the nicest guy in the world, but you thought he was a dick, right?
I think if you put out enough content, like, for instance, I do feel like I kind of know Joe Rogan. Like, I know if I hung out with Joe Rogan,
very real.
If I know Joe, like, at some point when you've watched 100 hours of someone's content, you do kind of know them. So I do believe it is a strange phenomenon for me and my girlfriend sometimes when people will come up to me and start talking like we've known each other for a long time. And I find it flattering. I don't have an issue with it. But it's just very interesting to me that contextually they feel they know me and they feel I know them, and I don't know who they are at all. Often they'll have messaged me. They'll come on one of my free calls, or they'll sent me a message and they'll be like, yeah, you know that whole thing with me and Amy. And I'm like, bro, I don't even remember your name. I don't know who you are. But they're like, in their mind, they're like, we have this connection.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. That connection I do have for my clients. Like, I do remember what my clients, and I have 800 clients right now, and it's getting harder, but I do remember their stories. Their stories are very important to me. And like, they actually do know me. I try to get to a point where I do 6 hours of group calls per week. And I try to get to the point where they do actually know me. I do think you can get to know someone over social media. It's interesting. Last night, there were probably 4 or 5 girls who came up and gave me a hug, and I've never met them before. I met, if you guys know who Taylor Spadacito is, she's a huge model, and she's a former Marine. And like, the reason why I wanted her on my podcast was not because she was a model, it's because she was a member of the Marine Corps. I was very interested. Anytime, that's the reason why I have Kindly Myers on often on my some of my calls, because she was a E3 in the Army for a while. So I'm always interested. Women in the military is always interesting to me. Very, very interesting conversations. Shout out to Queen Amy. She's a lieutenant in the Army, in the Guard right now. So those kind of things like that was interesting to me, but I'd never met her in person. And I know we'd have plenty to talk about. So do you really know someone? Yes and no. You can. I think in my case, if you guys watch like 100 of my podcasts, I will say you do know me. I would say you actively do know me. But for other people, I do think it's kind of interesting the way that whole situation works. And I've read 2 of Elon Musk's biographies and watched him on podcasts several times. I do think I would have a pretty interesting conversation with him. I think I know him well enough to know that. Like, you actually fucked Amber Heard? Like, what was that like? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because going back to the whole thing I said before about like women and men, I just want you to consider the wealthiest man in the world, who probably has one of the highest IQs on record, put his dick in Amber Heard. Just always remember that. Where whenever you're like, female delusion, and like men are like blah, blah, blah. You're like, women don't manipulate men, blah, blah, blah. Amber Heard. Elon Musk put his dick in Amber Heard. Just always remember, he put his penis in a woman who shit on Johnny Depp's bed. Never let that go. Never forget that. And then you're just like, oh, okay, the world makes more sense now. Okay, now I understand. Okay, the president, he fucks a porn star while his wife is pregnant, and he gets elected president of the United States. A man transitions to become a woman and then runs over someone, kills them, and 4 months later is Caitlyn Jenner is named Woman of the Year. Like, no one pays for shit. Like, O.J. Simpson's getting he's doing a fantasy football podcast. There's no repercussions for anything you're doing, right? And this whole level of discernment that you think is supposed to happen, it's like, no, these high stat. I was listening to Sadia Khan the other day. I like Sadia, but she was making a statement the other day about how what high status men do is they put a woman through the ringer, and then once they find a woman that's a really good woman, then they spoil her. And I was like, Elon Musk put his dick in Amber Heard. I'm sorry, Sadia. These good women you're imagining, I'm not saying they don't exist. It's just there's not many of them. My buddy Aaron Clary wrote a book called The Book of Numbers, and he goes over what percentage of women are marriage material. And by his estimation, it's about 2.3% of women. He's like, and he was looking at obesity. He was relating women with more than 5 tattoos as having a mental disorder. That's his opinion, but he believes that to be the case. He was saying things where it was like number of previous sexual partners, and then whether or not they had kids, and then like the number of piercings, etc., or whatever. And then he went over the data on like how many women are actually dating on these dating apps, which is a very, very low number. And he came up to about 2.3% of women are actually marriage material. Madness, absolute madness. And he's an economist.
Wow.
Really interesting stuff. So that's kind of where we are. I'm with my girlfriend now because she thinks I'm with her because she's the hottest girl I've ever seen. And that's not why I'm with her. I'm with her because she actually has the ability to make a mistake and then say, I'm sorry, and then come to the realization that she made a mistake. For a woman who's 22 years old, who's that attractive, to actually take accountability for her behavior is mind-numbing. Like literally, she is 1 in 50 million to do that. So that's why I'm with her. That's actually the reason why I'm with her.
Yeah, that's probably got to be the most attractive thing for a male brain to see that in someone who's like
a male brain who has abundance with women.
Right.
A male brain who doesn't have abundance with women, the most attractive thing is a big butt and big boobs. A male brain who's had a lot of experience with women, the most attractive thing is a woman who brings you peace.
Because you don't see that at all.
Yeah.
That's like the 1% right there.
Yeah.
We're like you're right. If it was like someone my age, say early mid-20s, all you're looking for is
when I was in my early 20s, it was the most sex possible with the most attractive women, the most frequently, period. That's all that mattered to me. In my 40s, it is a function of, do these women, like physical attractiveness is like, there's a level at which I can meet because I host all these bikini competitions and Babes in Toyland and the teatro parties, the Max party, whatever. So like the most attractive women, I meet all of them, but of them, which ones are going to bring me peace and which ones are going to be like a benefit or an asset to my lifestyle. And the ones that aren't, it's like we can still be friends. I love having them on my podcast.
Yeah.
When I heard a girl bragging about having a 900 body count, that's fucking hilarious. I'll have you on the show. I'll come out there, dude. I'll take you guys to dinner. It'll be terrific, but I'm not going to marry you. I'm not going to date you.
Yeah.
I can be discerning without being judgmental.
Oh, 100%. It's crazy because I feel like I have the similar mindset of like I know exactly what I'm looking for versus people just like they don't even have an end game. Like you said in your 20s, you were just like trying to get women to be attracted to you, get women to sleep with you.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No,
because
not
it
at all.
leads to a certain level of experience that in the end will lead you to just like it's just like one of these things where man, I'm just telling you, dude, like if I had the level of discernment in my 20s that I do like today with my ability to like meet women, I would have AIDS. Like it would be a fucking disaster. I would be broke with AIDS living on the street. Like I would just like these women would ruin me. You guys have to understand when you see a woman who is fantastically attractive, a couple questions you have to ask yourself. Women in general do want to be in relationships and they want to have babies, but she isn't having a baby and she isn't in a relationship. You need to ask yourself, she's clearly attractive enough to do so. Why is she not in a relationship? And the reality is she was able to get a certain strata of men, but because she didn't bring those men peace, that's actually why she's single. That's actually what's going on. And the women who can grasp that concept, they're like, oh, in reality, all he just wanted was peace. The women who grasp that concept, married with kids, super happy. The women who don't grasp that concept, what they do is they concern themselves so much with their physical attractiveness. So it's the next boob job and it's the next Botox segment. It's the next nose job that they need. And it's like, if I get hotter, then I'll get any guy I want. And the answer is you will in the short term. If you bring a man peace, what do you mean bring a man peace? I'm a bad bitch like what Cardi B told me I was.
Yeah.
Bring a man peace. What about my peace, bitch? Like when you do that, it's like, that's fine. You can do that. And trust me, come on the Michael Sartain podcast. I'll have you come on Access Vegas. If you're a bad bitch going your own way, I love to have you on my show. Like I said, I'll get you on stage at any nightclub, take you to dinner, treat you like a fucking king if that's what you want. If you ladies, you're a king, I'll treat you like a king if you want to be a king. But I don't want to date you.
Nope.
And I don't want to marry you. And I'm not hooking you up with any of my fucking friends because you're not good paternity. You're not a good bet for paternity certainty, and you're not a good bet for marriage. You're not a good bet to have kids with. That's it. Both things can be true. I can still love hanging out with you and think that you're fucking fun as shit. Bro, I'm the last guy to be judgmental. Yeah. I was out last night with fucking 12 porn stars. I don't give a fuck. And they're all my friends, and I love them, but I don't want to marry them.
Yep.
I don't want to marry them. You know what I'm saying? Like, Alexis Fox is awesome. Nicolette Shea is one of my good friends. Love hanging out with Nicolette. They're great, but I don't want to marry them. That's the difference.
Now, and I'm going to say this without sounding like a dick, because, like, I talked to Lisa Ann a few months ago, right? Yeah. Brilliant woman, right?
Yes.
And free, like you'd say, she's a free spirit. You could say
no,
Alexis Fox.
But also, Lisa Ann is in the rare category to where she's also talented enough, having nothing to do with pornography, to where I do see a high status man trying to lock her down as long as she stopped doing porn, you know, unless some dude like has some weird kink like that. But at the same time, like, I would not consider, like, I would love to have Lisa Ann on my fucking show, but she's not dating material. Both those things can be true.
For sure. What was I saying? It was like, because Alexis Fox, Nicolette Shea, I feel like they're really good and mature in a lot of other areas.
Oh my gosh,
right?
dude!
But it's just like
Phoenix Marie is awesome. I would go into business with Phoenix Marie. Like I would go into business with Alexis Fox. They're actually like They own a bunch of real estate. Tucci Cash is like a real estate mogul in the city right now. Okay, like they are, but it just seems like dating someone like that would be chaos.
Yeah,
I need peace. My life is stressful. Like, I just don't think people understand. There's always, if you're a successful man, the world is not cheering you on, right? There's no guys, go look. There's no Netflix documentaries about the good-looking, like, wealthy white dude who just made more money and fucked more women. Go find me that one. Find me the documentary about the hot guy who fucked more women and made more money, and then in the end, he just fucked more women. Show me that one. I'll show you the one about the guy who fucked a bunch of women and then went bankrupt. I'll show that one's all over the place for sure. The scandal is all over the place. When you're a good-looking guy, or if you're a wealthy guy, or if you're a charismatic guy, or if you're a successful guy, the world is not cheering you on, right? You have to consider that. Like, every day I wake up and there's a guy. There's specifically one like clown in Brazil specifically that they're out to steal my clients, to take my girl, often want to physically harm me. Every day I have to deal with this. Every day I literally have to deal with the competition. I'm watching these new guys on YouTube, and they're teaching social circle courses, and it's like they're not even bothering to change my words. They're literally repeating me word for word. It's very obvious they bought my course, and they're just like saying what I'm saying, like repeating it word for word. And I don't begrudge them. They're trying to make a living. I get it, whatever. But the thing is, like, I'll see that, and I don't think my girlfriend understands. Like, you want to know why I want to sit there and play fucking Madden and just, like, zone out? Because you don't understand. There are people, like, literally trying to kill me every day. Not literally. There are two guys who literally try to kill me.
Yeah.
There are other than that, there's guys who figuratively want to kill my business. My girlfriend works out at Fit Club. I love Fit Club. Fit Club's awesome. Shout out to Gavin. The place is great. But she goes there, and I'm not stupid. Every dude there is trying to, like, help her with the weights and whatever. Right. And, like, there's dudes out there trying to take my girl. There's dudes that are trying to take my money. And, like, I have a burden of performance. And then when I come home and I want peace, like, I get it. You're a bad bitch. You're awesome. Like, what do I bring to the table? I am the table. When women say stuff like that, like, I understand why they feel that way, but it's just like, I have options. Why don't I just choose a version of you that's 10 years younger and isn't going to just sit there and create chaos in my life? Dude, some of these women that are like 33 and stay in the gym and get like a bunch of plastic surgery are still fine as shit. They are super hot. But The problem is there's also a 23-year-old version of you that's also super hot that isn't going to give me as much shit. And so why would I ever choose you over that girl? That's the difference. You know, that's where I think a lot of these women are like, they're coming to this realization. They're looking, they're getting 100,000 likes on a photo, but at the same time, they can't get a guy to lock them down.
Are you at a point now where, because you have all of this experience, right? I asked you what 20 Michael was compared to 40s Michael.
Yeah.
Would you ever settle down, have kids, have that kind of life?
Yeah, no, I mean, my intention would be to do that with my partner now if it works out.
Nice.
But yeah, definitely, I would like to do that. It's funny. There's a number in my head financially I want to get to, and then I would consider that.
Interesting.
There's a number in my head before I buy a car. There's a number in my head before I buy a house. There's a number in my head before I were to retire. There's a number in my head before I get married. It's just me. I know some people are not as OCD as me, but like there's a financial number I need to see in my bank account before I would consider certain decisions.
No, especially because you have to factor in like how many kids you're going to have, all the different instances where there's like an emergency and you're going to have to drop a ton of money on something. Like I have people, there's a lot of my close friends, devoted Christians who like are married with kids at 22, 23 years old, broke. All they thought was just, I want to get married and I want to have kids with no real game plan.
I got letters from Columbia and Harvard when I was in high school, and I had went to the Harvard interview and explained to my dad what the situation was. And my grades weren't good enough. The only reason I got a letter from them is because I was a district debate champion. It wasn't because of my grades. And I knew I wasn't going to get a scholarship. So I went and talked to my dad, and it was a number my dad wasn't comfortable with for me to go to Harvard. And I don't blame him. It was outrageously expensive at the time. I think it was like $22,000 a semester, which 25 years ago was $200,000 a semester today, right? It's crazy numbers. And I would like if my kids tell me they want to go to Oxford or if they want to go to Harvard, I don't want money to be an issue. That's just my choice.
Yeah.
You can make whatever choice. You can choose to have kids when you're younger. You can make whatever choice you want. That was my choice to do that.
Last question for you before we wrap this up. Because I'm very curious because you've met a lot of different people, right? I kind of mentioned about possibly, or in my own way, from what I've seen, is that you don't necessarily know people until you meet them, as opposed to what you see on social media, right?
I think I think for most people that's the case. I think if you watch, like guys, if you watch 100 hours of Fresh and Fit, you're gonna get to know what when you meet Myron in person, he kind of is like that, right?
Right.
If you watched 100 hours of my content, you do kind of know who I am.
Who was Dan Bilzerian in your mind before you met him versus when you actually connected with him?
I saw, because he's so stoic in his face. I would say, like, so he and I used to live in the same building, like next door to here, Panorama, and Dan was very stoic, and in my mind, I kind of thought that he was going to be like completely unrelatable. It was just a vague feeling when I first met him, though. I got to tell you, when the first time he and I met and hung out, extremely relatable. We're both prior military, but his overall concept of like how he attracts women is like, mine is similar, but it's the difference between the moon and Jupiter. Like it's the size difference. The magnitude of what he was able to accomplish is like what I believe. But his engine is I'm a Cessna 172 and he's a fucking 747. Yeah. The magnitude of what he was able to accomplish, like he took pre-selection to a point that was beyond what Hugh Hefner did. And so what does that do? Dan is a walking proof that pre-selection, 1, works, and 2, has no limit. He is a walking proof because it's just, when you see that, the thing that he tried to manufacture, the funnel he tried to manufacture to bring women into his life, is better than any funnel any man has ever created, possibly in history, with the exception of like Muhammad the Bloodthirsty or something like that, who had 800 children, right? With the exception of someone like that, the thing that he created was better for him to create genuine attraction to women than anything I've ever seen. So it's really funny because there's Dan, my friend, and then there's Dan, the philosopher.
Yep. Dan,
my friend, he's just an awesome dude. Very generous. There's things you guys don't know about him. Stuff he does for charity. That's awesome. He's super generous. When you go to his house, he feeds you. He has a chef that makes food for you. He's fucking awesome. There's hardly any girls there ever. We just talk business. I learn a ton from him. There's Dan, my friend. Then there's Dan, the philosopher. Dan, the philosopher, he came up with some concepts on like how to get women to become extremely jealous. Here's an extreme example. I know this is probably too much for your audience, but this is an extreme example.
Let it go.
If you were to ask Dan, how do I get a super hot girl to want to have sex with me? And his answer would be, you need to fuck another girl right in front of her. Okay, now, for most of us, that is not a reality. Got it? But like that's an extreme example. What's something you could do that's not quite as extreme? That's like on the Michael Sartain level. It would be to go out to a club where there's a girl that you like and have her see 5 or 6 other girls walk in with you and show you compliance without you being like showing them any interest. Do something like that. Dan literally is like, yeah, I would just fuck a girl in front of another girl and then she'd want to fuck me. And that was like, okay. And to be fair, I mean, in all honesty, I've done that before and it's worked. But that's a rare occasion. In reality, what's more likely to happen is you just show a pre-selection. So like that's kind of the thing. Like Dan, the philosopher, Dan the other day was he was asking, he's like, do you think it's worse if you try to kiss a girl and she rejects you, or if you put your hand on her, you put her hand on your dick and she pulls away? And all of us were like, Dan, are you crazy? If I try to put random girls' hands on my dick, I'm going to jail. Mm-hmm. It's like, you're only saying this because you're Dan, because you can get away with it. So anyway, we asked a bunch of girls and they all agree with Dan.
Yep.
They all agree with Dan. They think it was worse to get rejected from kissing. And it's one of the things. So there's Dan, my friend, and then there's Dan the philosopher. And Dan the philosopher, he has so much experience in some of these issues that some of these areas that like he comes up with some like really great ideas.
I mean, that's crazy. Yeah. I would go with your route. I would say.
Yeah, I mean,
yours is way more modest. I feel like 99%.
It's attainable. Yeah, like Dan has fuck you money, so he can actually do things. It's one of these things where people like hate on him. I promise you, if you had Dan's money, you wouldn't be Dan. Because it's not just that. It's like there's a level of charisma and absolute like self-certainty that he has to post some of the crazy shit that he was posting at the beginning of Instagram. There's one shot where he has Lady Mazzo, she's a model, and she's got 2 pistols covering her nipples, and it's on his. And I just wouldn't have done that. If I had $400 million, I would not have done that. Yeah, I wouldn't have done that. He had this one video, he has one photo. He's taken it down since, where all the girls from Tropic Beauty were behind him, and he said, My guidance counselor said I wasn't going to amount to shit. He was probably right, but I got my dick sucked by 3 girls this morning. And I was like, bro, what the fuck? I would never have posted something like that. If I had Dan's money, I would have never posted something like that. So this idea that you could just be Dan if you had Dan's money is not true. There's so much more to it than that, right? His level of not giving a fuck is real, bro. I've never seen anybody like it. I know. I have friends that are billionaires, and they care so much about what people think about them. Mm-hmm. Not Dan. He doesn't care.
On that topic of people, and this will be the last question. I know you got to wrap up. What's your thought? I'm a big wrestling fan.
Yeah.
The Vince McMahon lawsuit.
Yeah.
As a billionaire who probably doesn't give a fuck what anybody thinks.
Yeah.
What do you think of that whole thing?
Well, because it's a civil suit, I mean, in the end, it's just going to be money and reputation. But like, one of the crazy things is like this, right? Imagine if President Trump gets elected again and he cheats on his wife. What happens to his approval rating? The fact that you guys even have to consider this question.
I don't know.
The fact that you even have to consider this question is my point exactly. His fan base doesn't care. Do you think Vince McMahon's fan base cares? A bunch of rowdy wrestling fans? Yeah, it's weird. He shit on some girl's chest. That's fucking weird. But they do that every day in Dubai, right? That's what Dubai translated in English means Persian man shitting on a girl's chest for $3K. That's what it's so crazy. It's so funny. My friends from Dubai, they're like, no, that never happens. And I talk to girls and they're like, yeah, I've watched it. It happens all the time. Mm-hmm. It's just like, it's one of these crazy things where it's like, I think it's pretty unseemly. It's unsightly that he did this. Okay, I'll tell you what. H.W. Bush, right? I have a ton of respect for the man. Got shot down in World War II. Director of the CIA. He did a lot of great things for his country, whatever. Controversial, I get it. First Iraq War, whatever. At the end, he didn't know where he was. He was in a wheelchair. He had medical assistants with him all the time. And apparently he grabbed some woman's butt. What do I do with that? I don't know what to do with that. Does that counter everything that this man has done? Like, I don't know where to take that. And I don't know that before he died that he even knew that he was doing what he was doing. Vince McMahon has abused steroids for a good portion of his life, and has gotten ridiculous levels of plastic surgery done to his face. And he's older. He's an older man. I believe he's in his 70s.
He's 78.
Yeah, he's 78 years old. I don't know what to do with this. I think Vince McMahon was a pioneer in what he was doing and did some incredibly great stuff. But at the same time, like, I don't know what to do when somebody's that old. Like, what do I, like, again, like, and this is the scary part. I don't even know how to hold Joe Biden responsible for his actions, because I'm not positive that, and I do mean this with all due respect, that President Biden can't use the bathroom on a regular basis without hurting himself. Like, I don't know that that's not possible when we get to that age. There's different levels of 80. There's Warren Buffett level of 80. Warren Buffett is a sharp motherfucker at 80. Yeah. That's different. Okay, than Joe Biden at 80, where it's like, could you imagine? I'm not trying to make a political point here. Could you imagine being in the passenger seat while Joe Biden is driving your car? I'm just be serious.
I would never close my eyes.
Be real right now and just tell me that I'm not making this up. The concept of Joe Biden driving your car versus the concept of Donald Trump driving your car. And I'm not trying to be a Trump supporter here, but like, Trump seems awake and aware. Oh, there's a thing happening here. I noticed this thing. I got to be at this thing at this date. I remember your name is Tom. That's what Trump seems like to me. With Biden, it just seems like, yeah, whatever. Lick the ice cream cone. Yeah, well, we're doing great. Everything's great. Yeah, it's awesome. Well, blah 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 blah. I don't know what that thing I just said was, but come on, guys. It's whatever. I just don't know. Yeah. So like, that's the only thing. So like, how much do I hold HW to the fire or Vince McMahon? It's tough to say. Yeah, it's tough because of the age situation. I just don't know. I will say this though. This thing that we've learned: NDAs don't mean anything.
Nope.
There's no privacy. I have cameras in my house because I don't want anyone making up stuff about me. That comes over and says, Michael did this. I'm like, got you on camera. Can't say that. This is something I learned from Dan. Dan has cameras in every room in his house.
Oh yeah.
And I just tell you, man, it's just one of these situations where, I don't know what the future holds as far as that's concerned, right? I forgot what my original point was on that, but with the whole Vince McMahon situation. Oh yeah, I remember now. The Vince McMahon situation. Guys, stop snitching on yourself.
Yeah.
Right. There's that one thing with Andrew Tate where they're using it as Vice is using it as evidence. There's one thing where he has these voice memos. And by the way, Andrew and I would message back and forth back in the day before Andrew was super famous. And I didn't know if it was really Andrew until he started leaving me the voice memos on WhatsApp. Then I was like, oh yeah, that really is Andrew Tate. And what happened was, they're using it against him years later, but there's also text that go along with it. And the text messages is, and I'm not going to say the word, but he says, do you consent to my grape? And she goes, well, if I consented to it, she goes, LOL, if I consented to it, then it wouldn't be grape, right? And then he leaves the voice memo. So it's very clear in context what he says in the voice memo isn't that bad, but out of context, it makes him look horrible. Yeah. And I got news for you guys. If you're successful, guys, no one gives a fuck about your context. Do you guys remember the video of Joe Rogan saying the N-word over and over again when he's just quoting Paul Mooney? Mm-hmm. Why is he doing that? They're taking him out of context. But people who don't like Joe Rogan, they don't want to put him in context. They want him to be out of context. And so that's the thing. So my point is, guys, stop snitching on yourself. Yeah. Like, if you're with a woman that you don't know that you can trust and you're taking a dookie on her chest, guess what's going to happen? Yeah. It's going to come out in the end. And so that's the lesson to be learned here. And the other thing is, like, hey, maybe go see a therapist and maybe not want a dookie on people. That might be another issue as well. Dude, I hear these girls on OnlyFans tell me how many women, like, men want their poop. And I'm like, what is wrong with you, man? Why is it? Whatever. I don't know how to explain that. That one is one from an evolutionary standpoint. I cannot explain.
We can do a full podcast on that one next time.
Why do people like, dude, I have friends, guy friends I know, like they're like, their girls, they want to poop with them or something. It's just so crazy. I'm like, I've been with my girlfriend for 15 months. When I poop, she needs to shut the door and not be in the bathroom with me. I'm sorry. That's not weird. That doesn't make me weird. I don't even want the cats in the room with me when I poop. No.
So if people want to hear more controversial takes from you, where can they follow you?
Bro,
on social
anywhere.
media?
People come up to me all the time. They're like annoyed with how much they see my shit online. Michael Sartain on Instagram is going to be the easiest, kind of the epicenter of all of it. And then my YouTube channel. For long form content, definitely go to YouTube. For short form content, TikTok and Instagram would be best, or Twitter if Twitter's if you're a real troll and you like to get in there. with the real evil, nasty people on Twitter. Twitter's such an ugly place, bro. I didn't know. I'd given up on Twitter years ago, and I got back on it when Elon Musk bought the platform.
Yeah.
Bro, I had a bunch of white supremacists like sit there threaten to kill me. And then afterwards I responded, be like, hey, bro, why don't you meet me up at this place and I'll beat the shit out of you? Not, but obviously it's stupid. I can't say something like that on Twitter, but I said it. But it's clear like these white supremacists were threatening to kill me, and I lost my account. What? Like, bro, are you kidding me? It was so crazy. It was funny. You want to know what makes it even funnier? One of the white supremacists, like the leader guy, actually apologized for what happened. How crazy is this?
Yep.
What level, what planet are we on? Bro, it's just nuts. But yeah, Twitter is such a nasty, nasty place, bro. It's so crazy. But yeah, man, you can find me. The Michael Sartain on Instagram and Michael Sartain on YouTube are probably going to be the main places. And then if you want, as a man, to learn to get better at networking, dating, leadership, communication, if you want to improve those things and you want to be the guy who shows up to a party with 70 girls, just go to moamentoring.com. And when I say 70, I mean to say 170. And if you don't believe me, go look for the fucking proof on my IG. I teach guys, random average guys, to show up to events with hundreds of girls sometimes. And from that point, you're not dating anymore. You're just like, the women are fighting for your attention. How do you get into those situations? We teach you through pre-selection, female friends, value arbitrage, suspension of disbelief, finding mentor. We teach you all these techniques that get you to that place. So if that's what you're interested in, just go to moamentoring.com.
Hey, if you're looking to be basically the best version of yourself,
yes, for sure.
Go check out Michael Sartain.
One other thing, if you are a closer, if you're a skilled high ticket closer, go to moamentoring.com/jobs. We're looking for closers. We just hired a new batch of them. It's very competitive to work for us. Like, we have like several like Harvard graduates that are working for us, whatever. But if you are like a top tier closer, not some guy, if you have experience and you're coachable and you're willing to work some serious hours, please hit us up. We're always looking for qualified closers. But I will tell you right now, at this point, our hire rate is about 1% of the applicants. We've had almost 1,000 applicants right now. It's just you guys. I'm telling you, like, don't bother doing this unless you are not a top tier closer.
Michael Sartain, episode 816 of the podcast, guys. Remember to comment, like, and subscribe on our YouTube channel at Jack O'Hara TV.